Welcome to the Product Quest podcast. Thank you for joining us on our journey to better understand innovation and product strategy. My name is Jonathan Edwards, and joining me, as always, my co-hosts Jan Vermuth and Scott Burleson. This is part 2 of our discussion with Murat Goker and Francesco Cardoletti. In part 1, we talked about their experience in entrepreneurship, how they started, their lessons learned, and today we pursue our discussion. So, Murat, you are very creative. You have a lot of different ideas for businesses and for different ventures. My question is, how do you tell which ideas are good or not good? Is this pure intuition? How do you go about that?
I mean, it's a difficult question because, I mentioned this maybe a little bit earlier, but most ideas come from an environment of some dissatisfaction with a product or service, but more importantly, the needs of the few or many not being fulfilled adequately, right? It is kind of like evolutionary behavior of the brain, which focuses and on the interest that you have as an entrepreneur in solving something that you're frankly irritated by, right? I mean, like you call up a company and you have let's say they provide a service, and you ask them, well, a good example is actually 1-800-mattress. Okay, in the United States, if you want mattresses and you're a bachelor moving home to home within Manhattan City or any other place in the US, you call 1-800-mattress, and literally the same day they can deliver a mattress to your house, right? And not only that, but when you're talking to the customer service, you tell them, man, I would really love to have the bed they have in the W hotels. They go, oh, 1 second, the W hotel uses this brand of blah, blah, blah. Oh, really? Do you guys also carry the Four Seasons hotels? Yeah, that's this other brand over here. Like, this is such a flawless kind of service. But the moment, you have somebody else who you do the same kind of call to, and they just start telling you what you can't have because it's restricted by some internal policy or their operational incapabilities and all that kind of stuff. That's really where I think an idea kind of comes to life, is like, I'm really frustrated. This is something basic. Like, how come no one's ever thought about, solving this problem, which is, easy to solve from at least my perspective, and also a need from my side. It just irritates the hell out of me that nobody can do this. So I think most ideas come from that need. That you yourself have, or your family member, or your pet, or your girlfriend, or whatever it might be, or your parents. Maybe they're in retirement ages, and you see that they have difficulty accessing medicine, right? Rare disease medication, for example, is my current area of expertise, and the ideas really come out of a need to serve people who are really suffering at this moment, that you have to have a high level of, let's say, EQ for and empathy for, and not just see your business as making money, right? Because at the end of the day, money will come as long as you cater to some of these needs. But it isn't like there isn't any, let's say, ideation process. And by the way, ideogen stands for the ideo is the creation of ideas, and gen stands for the generation. So the generation of people who are constantly creating ideas is where ideogen, the brand name, came from. And so there are, of course, many methodologies to do ideation. I think that's more Francesco's field of let's say, how to do the deduction on how to process ideas into valuable, executable, kind of validatable processes. But at the end of the day, you really have to just keep thinking about it passionately until you expose yourself to enough of the fundamentals around that idea so that you can actually see whether it could be brought to life. And what is the challenge, why people haven't brought it to life until today? I don't know, Francesco, maybe you have more.
Well, before asking Francesco, I'd be really interested in getting your opinion, Francesco, on this question also. But I have a list on my phone with, I don't know, maybe 80 different business ideas that I've written through the years. What is your method for then maybe filtering? Because you have I mean, when things frustrate you during your day and say, oh, I could do this better. What is the difference between actually going in and making a business out of it and just staying frustrated and not doing anything about it? For you, Murat?
Well, I can give you a real example of that right now. Of course, it's going to be within my business and not like a business starting from scratch, because businesses starting from scratch, even though you might have great ideas, especially if you have no experience in it, the chances that you're going to be able to evaluate that idea to whether it will be successful or not are pretty slim. Unless you really, as Francesco said previously, are talking to people with a lot of experience and they can guide you and mentor you along the way. And of course, that's not enough, because people who are advising also have other stuff to do, right? So it's not like they're living and breathing what you're doing every day. So you have to actually hire or partner up with people who are experienced, who have executed on it before, who can guide you in doing the business plan before you even decide to launch. So there's a whole bunch of factors that go in there. But today, if I am looking for a product to launch, which I do every day, by the way, so it's we're constantly looking for gaps, right? Our methodology in Ideogen for any country we're entering is to look at the negative. Okay, what doesn't exist in that country in terms of a therapy or a drug or a rare disease solution or whatever it might be. And once we go into that negative, you don't only find the negatives that are huge money makers, right? You find a whole bunch of stuff that even if you registered it, you launched it, you signed the product, and you made it available, maybe there's only a handful of patients who actually really need it. So that's where the evaluation process kicks in. But our evaluation process is, okay, let's first look at, let's say, incidence and prevalence rates. What is the per capita incidence of this disease, and what is currently being used in the local market to treat this disease? Where does the new drug you're addressing actually sit on the existing protocols of the doctors who are kind of following step one? You apply aspirin. Step two, you do aspirin plus something else, and so on and so forth. And these are pretty well defined, since it's a regulated industry and very scientific in nature. Now that's a deduction process, right? Where we're trying to see what is the maximum potential of a market size. And for that, we do have to go out and speak to countless, key opinion leaders. We have to go talk to pharmacists. We have to get data that is publicly available, some that is not publicly available, by talking to wholesalers. And that's kind of like a hit or miss thing. You get data from everywhere, and you have to risk adjust it. So you can never always be right. And ultimately, what you come to realize is, okay, what is the possibility that I get reimbursed for this product? What is the maximum price I will get? And you risk adjust that too. And ultimately, you come to a place where you say, okay, if I do bring this product that is a need for patients who currently have no access, maybe it's only for 50, 60 patients, but it's an expensive drug, which is the case for most orphan diseases. Then you see if your appetite for that size of a revenue is in your company's strategy, right? We as a company, for any given country, we do not go into any product below $1 million in annual turnover. Our target is, of course, always to be patient focused and treat a patient problem. But we also know operationally, we won't be able to turn a buck for the company to reinvest into more products and service more patients if we do not keep a basic environment that we can focus on for the benefit of these patients. So this is kind of the deductive process of how we get ideas into a readiness to even sign them, right? Because our industry is it takes a long time for everything. Once I sign a drug, it takes 2 years for that product to get approved in a destination country and reimbursed in that destination country. And I only launch it 3 years down the road. So whatever I do today is only going to really kick in 3 years down the road. So what I have to do is every year sign 5-10 products, so that eventually I'm in this routine of receiving every year, ideally 5 to 10 products, that is allowing me to grow exponentially. Basically, but that's basically, I think, my process in ideas for an established startup in expanding and scaling its product offerings, and how we kind of consider entering new products.
So a fairly analytical approach to estimating the market, from what I understand at your stage in idea gen. What about you, Francesco? Maybe you can tell us a bit more about Paw Squad, and how you came to that idea, if that helps. And so the question is, how does one firstly get ideas? And I think we've talked about that a bit, but more importantly, how does one filter ideas down?
So again, just so am I on mute? No, not. So I think that the way that I filter ideas down, and then I can tell you about Paw Squad, but the way that I filter ideas down is, is there my first question is always, is there something that I know about this particular space or this particular idea that other people don't have, or that other people don't know, right? Do I have anything unique about my insight about this segment, right? So that's the first thing, right? So unless I feel confident about that, then I probably wouldn't necessarily pursue it. The second one is, is there anything in the market right now? Is there a new consumer behavior? Is there a new technology? Is there a new macro, right? That makes this the right time to do that, right? Why now, right? Like, the issue of like market sizing. I mean, for Murat makes a lot of sense because of what it does, right? Market sizing, it's depending on what the market is, right? Usually, ideas start in one direction and they move to another. So I don't necessarily look at the size of a particular market. I usually look at what insight do I have, why is this the right time, and how many people do you think will have a similar problem that I do right now, right? So that's just very kind of like in a very kind of theoretical way. With Paw Squad, to me that was super easy, right? I had an issue, right? I had a pet. The pet was quite old, was 15 years old, 13 years old at the time. It was my wife's and my baby, right? And so, we just took him to the vet one day, and they told us he has developed this thing called osteoarthritis, and he will have to take this super powerful steroid for the rest of his life, and his life is gonna kind of degrade, and it's kind of like the end of the line. And I was like, wow, you told me this in 10 minutes. You had seen the pet 2 months ago and you hadn't caught it. And now all of a sudden you tell me that all I can do is to give him like a steroid. And I was like, I want a second opinion, like now. And the guy was like, well, okay, you can go get it. But vets didn't want to give me a second opinion because it doesn't look good in the profession to give a second opinion or to kind of contradict or disagree with another vet. And I was like, I think I had just moved from the States, and I was like, you know what? In the US, I can, if I want to speak to a doctor, I can just kind of like get onto a doctor on demand and have a consultation. Why can't I do that, right? So that was that was the reason why I started, right? Turns out, by the way, that that's not the real insight of what made the company grow, right? The insight of what made the company grow is that pet owners are incredibly pet owners need to have their anxiety is relieved when their pet is sick, right? If you wake up in the middle of the night and your pet is vomiting, you're like, should I call the vet? Should I run to the emergency room? And so having somebody to talk to that calms you down and says, good, chill out, everything is going to be fine, is worth kind of a $50 phone call, right? So that's really the right. But I started for obviously a completely different reason.
I find the idea great because we hear about telemedicine so much, and is this correct to characterize it as a telemedicine for pets? Not really. No, okay, sorry. So maybe you can explain.
No. It's telemedicine implies that you are treating a condition, right? And in the pet world, you cannot diagnose online, right? That's because you need to actually physically be able to touch the pet, because that's the only way that the pet can't speak. So it cannot tell you his symptoms. You are not a dog or a cat, therefore you cannot communicate, how the pet feels. So the only thing the vet can do is to feel kind of like his stomach, look at his eyes and whatnot, right? And so we started believing that we could do a telemedicine play, right? Until we realized that the regulators told us no way you can do that, right? And but that's when we realized, that was not the value, right? The value was not to replace the vet, and that's what was not the job, right? Pets do not want to have their vet replaced. They still have a loyalty for their vet. They still they still trust the relationship. But again, if it happens in the weekend, in the middle of the night, while you're at work, right? What do you do, right? Who can you talk to, right? And that's where the value was like almost like, again, relieving the pet owners of his anxieties around the health of his pet. That was the job that ultimately we were helping them do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so obviously you've mentioned the word job, and we're all of us three quite a lot into this framework of jobs to be done, which I understand you also know a bit about, Francesco. So it seems to me that in this case, much like Murat, the idea for the business stemmed from your own personal frustration or own personal experience in dealing with the problems with your pet and the anxiety linked to that. What I found curious is actually none of you mentioned something that I find a very important aspect of filtering ideas, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, which is passion or mission. How does that play a role into what you're doing? Or to go back to reference what Murat said about all businesses are the same, is in the end just the interest in the making the business and whatever it is goes because it's the interest is the business, or how does passion and the mission come into the picture?
I think that there are certainly a lot of businesses that are mission driven and are impact driven. I have no doubt about it, right? But then let's be honest, right? Let's look at most of the businesses out there, right? A marketplace that connects businesses with office space. What's the vision? What's the mission? Right? Let's be clear. There is a need. You spot the opportunity, and now you're executing against it, right? Now they might tell you, like we were told you, that they are in the business of bringing people together. That's fine. They can package it, they can make it look pretty and put bells on it, but fundamentally they're executing against a need. And that's what drives them, right? What drives them is like to be the best at doing that job, right? At building that company. In my view, like, was I passionate about dealing with all the the health pets problem in the world? No, I was passionate about fixing my dog and making sure that he was healthy, right? So now, if I could help other people along the way in doing that, great. If I can build a successful business along the way, even better, right? But I was trying to scratch my own itch, right? I wanted to solve my problem, and it just happened that I was able to solve other people's problems. But I wasn't driven about, although to be fair, I put it on my pitch decks and all that, like making pets health or like pets well-being, blah, 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 the center of, sure. But, it was not like I was born with a passion. That's what I want to do in my life, right? I mean, I'm not Dr. Belittle. I know it sounds, I'm removing the romanticism from the startup, but we also need to be pragmatic about it.
Mm-hmm. You're Dr. Do Big.
Yeah, exactly.
Murat, how about you then? What is the role of the passion or the mission? Or you were talking before about the empathy or high EQ towards helping people. How does that factor in?
So, I mean, I think, I guess why we don't mention passion is because it's kind of given that if you don't have passion, you're obviously not going to succeed in what you're doing. I mean, unless you're working in a factory line and your job is to, churn out, 100 products a day, whether you have passion or not is not going to change anything because there's checks and balances on that production line that will basically throw out any products that are not of a certain quality standard, right? So for any, I think for an innovative team or organization, what is more important than passion is culture, right? Culture is the ultimate defining factor that differentiates company A versus B versus Z, whatever it might be. And if you look at any company, both successes and failures, so I can give you some of the big ones everybody will know, obviously, whether you have Uber or you have WeWork, right? WeWork, from my perspective, is a complete scam. Okay, I mean, there is no other way to describe it. Now, are they a scam that ultimately ended up making money because so much money was pumped into it that basically there was no other option? Sure, and that's where I find like the founders of such companies who are pure charm, but nothing else but BS, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, you know what I, at least what I know from the outside. Now, are they smart? Are they successful? Sure, from somebody's perspective. But at the end of the day, did they enrich the world of a WeWork culture of creating a technology company in an office rental space or whatever? I mean, it was just repackaging what existed, and somebody just sold it in a different light. So at the end of the day, the culture, even in the failure, was almost cult-like, right? They followed this aspirational founder who he even convinced the owner and CEO of SoftBank to put in billions of dollars without even assessing the financials of the company. I mean, it almost sounds ridiculous. Yeah, to think that somebody can get billions of dollars on a fundamental that is no different than what has existed everywhere else, with just a couple of phone calls and face-to-face visits and just charming someone right into believing that this could be something bigger than life. Then you look at
amazing
Uber.
skill though.
No, yeah, I mean, bullshitting is an amazing skill, that's for sure, and every sales rep, that's what they do, right? Well, yeah, I mean, for I think there's a finesse into bullshitting in a way that nobody calls you a bullshitter, right? And that is actually not really bullshit. It's more appealing to the emotional needs of the person across from you. And some will look at it who are more dry and say that's bullshit. Others will look at it as like, that's really charming, and I get it. Yes, it might have some non-truths to it, but it motivates me. It wants me, like, makes me want to be a part of something, and I think that's like a very thin line to be treading on. But the moment you take the guy in WeWork, let's say, as a CEO, and if you were to have put him maybe on top of another company that actually had really strong fundamentals, business value, most probably he could have been bigger than any other CEO until today. So I think it's a matter of matching those skill sets. But my reference was more to passion and culture, meaning that even a guy who had something that was kind of controversial, created a passion and culture in a company that created a sense of innovation, that drove people to want to work there, that drove people to want to use the services and products and whatever. Same on the Uber side. Uber actually had a fundamental revolutionary idea that changed the landscape and added value to the whole planet, okay, in so many ways, more than one. And the CEO over there was literally beyond passionate, right? I mean, he had so much grit that it was spilling out of his ears when he spoke to everyone.
Murat,
right?
Is it passion? Because you see, like, when I think about Uber, right? Again, I don't want to remove the romance from the conversation, right? Uber's mission is to connect people. Let's be clear about that, right? It's a is an after the fact mission, right? And so, is it passion or is obsession to solve the problem? Which of the two, right? Because I think that those two things are very different, right? He was obsessed at wanting to address that issue. He then, in my view, he then built a story to bring people along with him, right? And that's and now that's thought out as he was passionate about it. I frankly doubt that there was passion. I think it was a lot of obsession. I want to do it. I want to make it big. I want to show.
I agree with you. I think that it starts off as a passion that then becomes an obsession once you realize that this can be much bigger and much and you start to see the income coming in and you start to see the expansion possibilities, and then you realize, oh well, there's the God effect, right? I mean, when you start making that much money, not as an individual but as a company, and you start to see, I can scale this to China, I can scale this to everywhere, and then you start becoming larger than life. You're starting to meet everybody who means anything in the world, getting awards and all that. So I mean, I get it. It becomes an obsession at some point and you can't even let go of it. But from my perspective, I wouldn't mince the words. I don't think the words have so much meaning. The point is that at the end of the day, you have to be committed. And your level of commitment might be different than others, but that's ultimately what makes the difference, given other variables are aligned. is the amount of passion that you have for whatever you're doing. And that doesn't mean the mission of the company, by the way. It could just be the CEOs or founders' passion to creating something new, or wanting to prove themselves to other people. It could be an individual passion. It doesn't have to be related to the product or the company even, at the end of the day. Just being able to wake up in the morning, right, and do more than others do.
I guess that the nuance there is that, when you talk about, so passion is inextricably linked to mission and vision, right? And so when you're asking people to go in a very arduous journey with you, you need to give them a reason to believe, right? That it's beyond the paycheck, right? So like, why am I working 16 hours a day for for X $1,000 a month, right? Why am I doing that? There is a bigger meaning, right? So that's the point, right? So there is a bigger meaning as to why we're doing it. We are connecting people. We are whatever mumbo jumbo kind of mission, vision statement they come up with. And now in the past several years, there is it's passion driven, right? There are people that are very passionate about driving that vision, right? Driving that mission. And that's what I kind of, to some extent, in many ways, I call that bullshit, right? I think that they saw a massive opportunity. They are obsessed about taking advantage of the opportunity. And then they build a narrative to bring people along with them to do it, right? Again, it's semantics, maybe, but
yeah. I mean, what I find quite interesting, if you look at Uber, I mean, I don't know all the details about how this company started, but if I recall, they were in Paris or something like this and couldn't get a cab. And so they thought, wouldn't it be great if we could just press a button and have a cab? And so they started really with that idea in mind. And I think the first service was some limousines or something that you could basically order. Yeah. So it was basically, a taxi service. And I think what was quite interesting, what I recall, there was, and I think now it's less prevalent in their messaging, but at some point they were really arguing that Uber would solve transportation in general in cities. So it would reduce traffic because everyone would share cars, so there'd be more car sharing. So they kind of jumped onto a higher level mission, which was about solving transportation issues worldwide with their service. And of course, then using AI and self-driving cars so that no one would have to own a car anymore and everyone could just press a button and go from one place to the next. I think, I don't know where they're at on this thing, but I find it quite interesting to notice this, and I would go with Francesco a bit on this idea that they saw an opportunity, they had a frustration, like you were discussing also in your lives, that you found frustrations and thought, okay, I can do something about this. And then as they built the business, they thought, okay, we need to motivate people. We need to have a grander vision, a grander mission. And I think Elon Musk, for example, if we're going to talk about all these big entrepreneurs, he does this very well too. He has this long-term vision and mission. And I think the primary purpose of this is really to motivate people to come and work for the company and to make people motivated to work. I don't know if this you think does that resonate with you guys? Or?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't think that an Elon Musk cares at all what his employees are thinking or does. I mean, I think the reality is that, first of all, he's a brilliant guy. Okay, I mean, most probably one of the smartest guys in a long time. And at least from my perspective, others might disagree. I know a lot of people don't like what he says and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, the guy has taken on tasks that are literally like, history making. Okay. I mean, he's basically made one of the oldest industries, one of the most powerful industries, look obsolete in a matter of no time, right? The car industry, right? Even though they had all the skill sets, all the capabilities of being able to do absolutely everything he's doing, he came out of the blue and he said, you guys aren't doing the right thing. I'm going to do it differently. And he did it. Now, obviously, you have to be passionate about wanting to, do this to get there. Now, is he doing other things to increase his share price and all of that? Yes. Well, we're businessmen. I mean, the point of it at the end of the day is that there has to be an output to the input you give, and that's measured usually by a P&L and a balance sheet. Okay, I mean that's for every business universal. It's not something that is specific to a billionaire or a startup guy who or even a banker who, you know, if you ask for a credit, the first thing he asks you for is your audited financials. So the system is built in such a way that I'm forced to think about how I'm going to create more value for the company. Otherwise, I can't get funding. Otherwise, I can't invest more into my people and all of that. But ultimately, the culture that he brings onto the table of not believing that anything is impossible, or not taking like the standards as kind of given and unbeatable, and so many mega industries that you know, how am I going to fight against VW and Mercedes and everybody else, is ultimately what made his organization be able to surmount all of the obstacles along the way, right? And that's why for me, I don't tie it to passion, I tie it to culture. And they're good at injecting culture of the business into other people.
So let's get into this, because I really would like to talk about culture and how do you foster an innovative culture or team even? How do you go about doing this? Francesco.
Sorry, I was on mute. How do you, you know, it's a weird question, right? So initially, in particular, because when you are starting a company, you hire the people that you think have those elements. And I know it's kind of probably controversial, because, you know, there is this, we need to hire from different kind of like cultural pots, right? And because multicultural makes, but in reality, again, let's bring it back to kind of like the reality. We tend to hire people that mirror our cultural values in many ways, right? So the early stages of a company has people that think in very similar ways, right? Or maybe they don't think in similar ways, but they have very similar values, right? Because that's how you're building, that's how you start building the relationship and the bonds, right? So then there is the question of like, how do you, in particular from a startup standpoint, right? How do you inject those cultural elements that make any startup successful, right? Which is, you know, like, again, like going back to Murat, is like, is the grit, is the taking risk, is not being able to, is not having fear to fail, right? It's kind of like be scrappy and fast, kind of be analytical. So those are all things, you know, that can be taught, right? That's a lot of it is part of the job of the CEO, right? To show that it's okay to fail, right? To communicate his own failure to the team, right? To kind of like to present himself as like the person that doesn't have all the answers, right? And it's kind of like is the leading by example, right? Is having like those frank conversations where you're saying, you know, the mistakes that you've made, you know, and you encourage people to do the same, right? Because ultimately startups are about that, right? Are about, you know, like being fast, being scrappy, failing, and moving on, right? So I think it's a combination of the two things, right? And then ultimately, you know, like how do you build culture, right? It's, I think it's a combination of the two things, right? It's how you set up the initial team, right? It's the people that you choose to work with you. And then how you show by example how things are supposed to be done. And then of course the obvious, there is the ping pong table and the kind of the bags and the office.
You guys have time for ping pong? What the hell? No, but Francesco's absolutely on point. I mean, you know, it's the time. I think a lot of it is very much, you know, companies will shift as a result of management, you know, and you know, a new CEO coming in or a new director coming in or whatever it is for a small organization that is maybe built only of 20, 30 people in the beginning, ultimately makes the difference, because at the end of the day, you literally have like 5 people running the company, right? And then the rest are kind of the octopus's tentacles, who are doing the sales and whatever else in the field. And if the people do not see you as willing to sacrifice everything, if they don't see you as the last person leaving that office and the first person in that office before anyone can make it, there is no way that you're going to build a culture of these hungry and people who want to live in this aura or fairy tale that you're creating around something that is made of plastic, right? I mean, a product that is basic. It's an idea. It's a design concept. If it is a physical product, if it's a service, it's an idea again about, you know, what you're trying to solve with the service, some need you're trying to meet. At the end of the day, what you see is that, you know, it's this passion and the grit to actually convince everyone in your organization that what they do matters, and it matters to people that they might never even get to meet, but it matters, and somebody needs to convey that message internally on a regular basis. Otherwise, you know, everyone has an off day. I do too. Some days I go to work and I feel like I don't want to be here. I just want to go home and go to bed. You know, I mean, it's normal. Yeah, we're all humans at the end of the day.
I wanted to ask you about something else you mentioned in preparation for this talk, which is priorities. So we've talked about people and the importance of hiring the right people, of leading by example, of the skills such as grit and passion as being really important for fostering an innovative culture. We've talked about products and how you choose different ideas and validate ideas. And I wanted to talk now about priorities. I'm quite curious as to what this is for you guys, because it's not something that I would have put on my list. So I find it very interesting to talk about it. So what is priorities for you, and what do you mean by that, priorities? Maybe Francesco, if you want, or Murat.
Yeah, go ahead, No, go ahead, Francesco, please. You're on mute again.
Yeah, I'm always on mute. Sorry, guys. So I can speak from the point of view of startups, right? So from like early stage, so seed, Series A, you know, Series B, right? And you know, when you're at that stage in your company growth, everything is an opportunity. Everything is noise. There is always some other shiny object that you can pursue, right? You have what other competitors are doing. You have the ideas that you know, come up in the middle of the night. So there are all this stuff, right? And you know, but what you don't have is time, right? So you have lots of ideas, but you have very little time, and in most cases, you have very little resources, right? And so therefore, how do you know which work to do, right? So how do you prioritize? Clearly, prioritization becomes important, because if another company comes tomorrow that does exactly the same thing that you do, but they get to product market fit or to scale faster than you, they won the game, right? So it's a game of speed. It's getting to the finish line first, which means that you need to do the work fast. Therefore, you need to know which work to prioritize, and you cannot do everything. And so, you know, given that we know that 10% of the work usually, you know, 10% of the channels, 10% of the marketing, 10% of your feature will drive 80% of the value, right? That works also in this case. So it's about understanding what that 10% is, right? Is fundamentally understanding, you know, what are your key metrics, right? What are the drivers that moves those metrics, right? And what is the work that you need to do to move those drivers, right? So it's very methodical, right? And that's kind of like, that's the way that I think about prioritization, right? Once we've understood what is that bottleneck, and that you unlock the bottleneck, you move to the next bottleneck, right? And that allows you to have a team that knows exactly in which direction to move, knows how their job, her daily work is related to the goal that they have to get to, and actually knows what is the work, right? Can actually say, you know what, this week we'll focus on this area, and next week or next quarter we focus on that area. So that's how I think about prioritization.
I think that's fantastic advice, and definitely, if you at least conscious about this idea that I guess it's the Pareto Principle or something, this idea that 10% drives 90%. I think that's a very good thing to be conscious about it. Of course, in my experience, I've had also a lot of trouble sometimes identifying what this 10% is. Typically, you know, should you be focusing on sales or should you make your service better? You know, so this is obviously complicated.
Again, like, you know, should you make the product better or should you focus on sale? again, if you look at the way the business is at that moment, right? If you understand, both what your customers are looking for, but you also understand your funnel, you can figure out whether you should focus on sale or whether you should improve certain parts of your product, right? Ultimately, product delivers value. To deliver value, people need to use it. If people are getting stuck in some areas of your product, well, that, and that is your biggest drop off or your point of less activity, then you're going to have to focus on that. If on the other hand, you're having like 10 people a month using your product, well, probably you need to go up, and get more, right? So it's a matter of having a good understanding of where your business is at that moment. And frankly, is a troubleshooting exercise, right?
Okay, Murat, how do you go about finding out what you need to prioritize?
I think, I'll touch upon a point that at least, I think Francesco most probably would definitely consider as important. But I'll just put, I agree with everything Francesco said. I think priorities are most probably the most important thing when it relates to speed to market, because at the end of the day, a company from its incorporation date is at a race in time against its finances. Right? Yes, you might have a great idea and everything, but if you want that great idea to out-survive the financial capital you have, and remember, yes, there's a lot of money out there, but there's no guarantee you will be able to continuously finance everything. So your number one priority, as far as I'm concerned, having started many different businesses, is to generate money as quickly as possible, a source of income. Right? Even if it's an imperfect product, it doesn't matter. Most imperfect products outsell perfect products 10 to 1. Okay. If you go and look, I actually did this the other day. We were talking with a friend about, why can't we find some products that are commodities that we can kind of have produced somewhere and sell in Amazon in the US? We looked at the top 10 most selling products in the US, and literally the booger sucker is the top 7th selling product for parents who have kids who are trying to suck boogers out of their nose, and it's like selling millions of units, and so at the end of the day, I look at it, what is it? It's literally a plastic straw with a plastic tip and a pump on it. Right? It's like, could they make it cooler? Could they make it more ergonomic? Could it be more sex appeal, etc.? Absolutely. But do they really need to? Is it functional? Does it meet its purpose? Well, that's a priority, right? Your priority is to meet the need that actually the parents have. And the parents most probably don't care if it looks like a Prada nose sucker, right? They want it to simply be a functional one that meets their need as it relates to their child. So for me, I think finance ultimately determines, and financial priorities ultimately determine your priorities. And this also reflects then into, your payroll, the kind of people you hire. Do I actually need a commercial director, or can I actually get a commercial manager or someone who's super hungry sales rep who wants to become a commercial manager to maybe take him as a priority in this stage of my evolution of first launching the product, and then over time, once I have sales, see if he's capable of actually filling the shoes until a later stage, or do I need to bring someone with more experience on top of him to actually kind of scale this up? So all of it at the end of the day, whether it's financial priorities, human resources, all of that, I think the product priorities, if you have a basic product that meets the need, I think that is likely a lesser of a priority. Because again, you start with the need, right? Am I catering to a need? And as long as you have version A of the product, that you're going to come up with different versions down the road, and you're going to improve on it. And there's going to be version B, version C. So you have to look at it over the long run. But your commercial priority is to generate income, to secure the company, secure the wages of everybody working in that company, kind of create an initial culture that then is primed for an expansion into a bigger culture with a bigger vision, and take it phase by phase over time, and kind of troubleshooting error, as Francesco said, over time you have to keep troubleshooting yourself to make sure that you are ready for scaling up to the next level, in essence.
So prioritizing income, building culture. I think this is probably a good time to stop. I really want to thank both of you for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you.
This I've enjoyed this very much. So thank you both again. And maybe is there anything else you would like to tell us, such as where people might follow you or follow your different companies or ventures? Is there something you would like to communicate?
I mean, I'd prefer to just be seen next time around on the front cover of Times Magazine, just as a shock effect, you know. But no, I mean,
try
LinkedIn,
our best.
Yeah, try exactly. No, I think LinkedIn. You know, if you go and follow us on my company side on iGearGen's LinkedIn account, I think, or my personal LinkedIn, you'll most probably see posts that we put, and then kind of follow up on newses. Otherwise, it's usually press releases and places that we do anyway, one way or another. Francesco?
Yeah, same here. You know, I haven't put too much effort in my personal brand. So my LinkedIn, my Twitter, you can find me there.
You know, the biggest issue here is those that do don't usually advertise themselves because they're too busy doing. So that I think is kind of our state of mind. I suck at advertising myself because, you know, I do it with the work that I do. And I think, you know, Francesco is the same. So that's where we make a good match.
Brilliant. Okay. And that concludes today's Product Quest podcast. Please send any comments or ideas for future shows to productquestpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you very much.